So a little while back I came across some stuff online about lyres, the musical instrument, not the politicians or anything like that. Relatively recently there was some interesting examples found in Germany going back to the 6th century. It's now known as the Trossingen lyre, since it was found in Trossingen, Germany. But anyways, I had seen some stuff about them and got kind of interested, went looking online for lyres, and discovered some cheap ones on Amazon and eBay, places like that, and also found some kits to make your own, and I ended up getting a couple of those. Actually, I've opened up one, but the other one I didn't open yet, so I'll do a little unboxing here. And these kits are $17 each, and that's so cheap I just kind of had to try one out. It seemed like it would be kind of a fun, simple project just to finish one of these. So here's the actual lyre. You can see it's quite small. Some of the historical ones were, quite a bit longer. This is just made out of basswood. And this obviously is not going to be a super high quality thing. It's sort of a, pretty much a toy grade of musical instrument. But it doesn't look too bad. Biggest rough spot I see on here is this knot near the top. And there's just holes drilled there where you run the strings through. And the pegs go in the top. The thing is basically all assembled. Like I said, you basically just sand it, stain it, put whatever finish you want on it. And you get a little bag that has your zither pins in there for tuning. Just a very simple type of tuning peg that just goes in a hole and holds the friction in your strings, and a wrench for tuning, and a little nut or saddle or whatever you want to call it. Looks like maybe you have to file the grooves in that yourself. You'd be hard pressed to get this for 17 bucks. So not a bad deal. I got two of them because I figured, well, it was, you get twice the chances of getting a good one. I was worried it might come, really screwed up with big gaps in it and whatever. But they both look alright, and I think I'm going to keep one of these and maybe give one to my niece for Christmas. So I've got a little bit of rough grinding marks on here. I don't know if you can see them. And I'm going to try out some of these scrapers that I got a while ago. I don't know if I did a great job of sharpening them, but let's see if they'll take out some of these rough marks on the end grain here. Yeah, it seems to be doing a pretty good job. I would like to try out making some of these lyres, especially some recreations of the Trossingen style lyres from scratch, and that kind of prompted me to get back into stepping up my woodworking game again. So I built this bench and this old leg vise last week. So this is the first project on it. Working on these edges with some 100 grit sandpaper, which is Putting a much nicer finish on the edges of these plywood pieces than the scraper was. So I'm just sanding the front and back down to 400 grit now. It's a little bit tricky sanding around the sound hole because the paper wants to kind of fall in and catch on the edge of the hole. It's not too bad, and it's already at a pretty decent level of finish. So now I've sanded it, and I'm turning my attention to these holes for the strings and the zither pins, and you can see they're kind of ragged looking. So I'm going to take a drill bit and just by hand try to sort of ream those out a little bit and clean them up. And it looks like 1/8 of an inch is about the right size for the string holes. Maybe actually a little oversized, but it's working pretty good to get rid of that ragged stuff. That looks fairly nice. Well, I've let this dry for probably not quite 24 hours, so it should be ready to proceed. It's not bad looking. Still have some of those kind of light spots on the edges there. I thought about giving it another coat to try to even that out, but I don't really think it would make very much of a difference, and I don't really want to wait another whole day for a stain to dry, so I'm just going to forge ahead. And I'm just going to rub this on. I don't like to use rags with this kind of stuff because it just soaks into the rag and wastes a lot of it. And I also don't like taking the risk of having linseed oil soaked rags around because that can be dangerous. If you've ever wondered if that whole spontaneous combustion thing is real, I can confirm that it definitely is. Because when I was a little kid, my parents set the bathroom on fire one time. So I'm always pretty careful with that. So I think this is dry enough to start proceeding with the hardware, which is pretty simple. And this is getting to where I'm not entirely sure of what I'm doing. So the strings attached to these things that are called zither pins, where are we? They just go in a hole on the top of the instrument, and they're held in there by friction. You can see what kind of looks like a fine thread on there, and I'm not entirely sure if that's solely a texture for friction or if it's actually supposed to thread up and down as you tighten and loosen it. In other words, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be installed completely bottomed out in the hole and then, you know, turn it more to tighten the string, or if it needs to be left with room to screw in. I really have no idea there. Did a couple of Google searches and couldn't really find an answer. And the kit comes with no instructions whatsoever. But you can see about how deep it would go in there. And I can kind of hear some crackling of wood. Yeah. I'm going to back it out, I don't know, 2 turns. I think it probably would push right out the back of this thin plywood if I tried to thread it in all the way and bottom it out. So I'll leave it sticking up a bit. So I guess this seems to be the way to do it, is just thread them in and leave some room in the bottom. Alright, so I got the pins in, and now the next mystery is this little saddle piece, which just sits in this groove, and the strings rest on top of it, and the groove is kind of overly long for the piece to fit in there, but you basically just put it in the center. And now I really have no idea if I'm supposed to file grooves in this thing for the strings. It's probably not really necessary. And now I'm trying to sort these strings out, and this is another good joke, because it's pretty hard to tell which string is which. Pretty much the only option is to give it the eyeball micrometer here and try to start with the fattest one and try to get them in the right order. And it would go from the largest one towards the player on this side. So just put that through the end there, and through a hole in the pin. And the way I like to do it is to put it through the hole, and then I'll wrap it around and put it through the hole again. Except it won't fit through the hole again, so that's out. So now I've got that kink in there. Hopefully that's not a problem, but I'll just wrap it around and then put it through the hole. What a beautiful tone. It's complete. So there it is, pretty much finished. I'll clip this excess wire off at some point, but I've left it on there just in case I needed to take the strings off for any reason, to mess with the saddle or the pins or anything. because once they're cut short, there would be no way to put the strings back on after I took them off. And it plays. I'm sort of surprised in some ways. I will say this thing is extremely difficult to tune, mainly because of these pins and the terrible wrench that comes with it, which I don't have handy right now, but you saw before the angle of the handle on that wrench. It's really difficult to apply smooth force to it, if you know what I mean. The thing of it is, I mean, I play the guitar and the banjo with geared tuners on them, which makes it easy to tune, because you know you pluck your string rather as you're turning the tuner and listen to it change, and you can turn it a fair amount as you're dialing it in, whereas with these there's no gears in them, so a tiny amount of movement on these makes a very large difference in the tone of the string. And when you go to turn them with the wrench, you apply pressure and it doesn't move, and you apply more pressure and it still doesn't move, and you apply even more pressure and finally it moves, but it moves way too much. So it's really difficult to get it dialed into something close. And you can hear it sounds a little bit wonky, but that's pretty much the best I could do. I mean, I about gave up a couple of times, but I will say it did seem like it started to maybe break in a little bit and finally get it to where I could, you know, to get it close enough to be playable, which is pretty much where it is now, and maybe that will continue to improve. If it had a better wrench that came with it, it would be much easier, and I've been trying to think up a way to make something so that you at least have a handle at 90 degrees or something, so it would work better. Maybe something with a large T handle. It's not a fine instrument by any means, but you can play it, and it has a cool medieval sound to it. It's a little tricky to find information about these out there. I will link to the YouTube channel and to the particular video that I used to nail down the tuning on this. It's a channel called Longhouse Lyres, which is definitely the best source of information I found anywhere. And the guy makes lyres also, makes very nice, you know, medieval Anglo-Saxon ones, which cost you know, a few $100 or so, but I'm sure they're worth it for, you know, a very nice handmade instrument, which, you know, from the video it sounds way better than this. But it's something anyways. You know, something you can play and kind of get that medieval sound out of it, which is all I wanted, so I'm happy with it.